Hello, good evening. Welcome to Look North. Tonight we have a special programme on the devastating impact of knife crime. Guilty. A teenager is convicted of murdering a 15-year-old boy who was stabbed to death as he walked home from school in Huddersfield. Police tell us they're seeing more children choosing to arm themselves with blades after fallouts with friends.
Now, one of those individuals, or more than one of them, might bring a knife to that fight with terrible consequences for everybody involved.
People living in the community where Kyrie was killed tell us the violence has to stop.
And to think that those children that go to the school, they had to walk past it every day seeing all of this. It's actually heartbreaking.
We spend time with teenagers in the town and the community organisations working with them to make a positive change. Kyrie McLean was just 15 years old when he was ambushed and stabbed to death as he walked home from school in Huddersfield. Tonight, a teenager has been found guilty of his murder. A 15-year-old accomplice had previously admitted to the charge. In the last 2 months, 4 people have been killed by knives in West Yorkshire, 2 of them teenagers like Kyrie. And we've seen daylight machete fights on the streets in Leeds. Tonight, we'll look at calls for more to be done to stop young people getting caught up in knife crime. But first, let's go to Emma Glasby. Emma, tell us what happened in court today.
This was a murder that left school children traumatised and a family devastated. How could a 15-year-old boy be murdered as he walked home from school? Now, the evidence in this week-long trial here at Leeds Crown Court was very difficult for everyone and extremely upsetting for the family and the friends of Kyrie McLean to listen to and to watch. CCTV footage was shown to the court and we saw 15-year-old Kyrie walking home with his friends after spending the day at the North Huddersfield Trust School. 2 teenage boys wearing balaclavas and dressed all in black had been waiting for Kyrie and they ran at him with knives. The stabbing was over in just a few seconds. We heard an eyewitness statement from a 15-year-old boy, a friend of Kyrie's, who said that one of the attackers jumped in the air like a ninja swinging his knife. He said he could hear Kyrie screaming loudly. Now, in distressing CCTV footage that was shown to the court, we saw Kyrie struggle up to his feet afterwards, helped up by a friend. We saw him try to run away, and then further down the road, we saw him collapse and other children rush to try and help him. 2 hours later, Kyrie died in hospital. Now, a 15-year-old boy did plead guilty to Kyrie's murder. He was seen on the CCTV stabbing Kyrie in the chest. But a 17-year-old boy who stabbed Kyrie in the leg denied murder, and he continued to lie throughout his trial here at Leeds Crown Court. But today, a jury found him guilty of murder in a unanimous verdict after around 4 hours of deliberations. Both boys, who cannot be named for legal reasons, will be sentenced at a later date.
Emma, thank you. And we will be going back to Emma at the end of the programme. The murder of Kyrie has exposed a knife crime problem in Huddersfield and added to concerns about the most vulnerable young people growing up in the town. Some families have told Look North that they're worried about their children being groomed and exploited by gangs. We've been speaking to 2 parents whose sons have both been threatened with knives.
I'm just frightened. We don't sleep, we're constantly worrying. When he's not in school, we're at work, we're worrying, where is he, what's he up to? It is scary. My son was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 6. From the age of 12, it started getting to a bit of a nightmare where he was getting kicked out of school. We got him into a specialist provision where he met other children, started smoking drugs, carrying knives. My son was caught with a knife, and when he actually got interviewed, they said he was taking it for protection. Obviously, they've explained to him then that they could end up getting hurt with their own weapon. He's now got to 15 and it's just worse than ever. The older children who he thinks are his friends, he will do whatever they ask him to do. I think he could end up in prison, or he could end up owing somebody money, and he could end up being stabbed. I just think there needs to be more funding for clubs, for mental health. There needs to be somebody that they can go and speak to. Like us, for 4 years, nobody to turn to. Who are you meant to turn to?
It's just terrible. Every time they go out, all he do is worry, because he's been in town before where he's been approached with about 10 lads and threatened him with a knife. It's just big gangs of lads, and they've always got conflict with each other from postcode wars and things like that. There's always arguments on social media, you know, on Instagram. You'll get people messaging saying where you're from, and, you know, my son's told me this, and, you know, they'll just start with them because they're from a certain area. People say, yeah, keeping off streets, you know, do this and do that. When I was younger, there used to be youth clubs. You used to be able to go to a youth club, and there'd be people down there that'd, you know, help you and talk to you. If they knew you were getting in trouble, they'd sit you down and have a chat with you. That's what they used to do with me when I was younger, when I was getting into a bit of bother. But now there's nowhere for them to go.
Let's take a look at the most recent data from the police and ONS now, which covers 12 months to September 2022, when Kyrie McLean was killed. In West Yorkshire, there were 2,353 serious offences involving a knife or sharp instrument. This includes attempted murder, threats to kill, assault, robbery and sexual offences. That number in South Yorkshire is lower at 1,633, and in North Yorkshire it's significantly low, as you can see, just 368 serious offences. Earlier I spoke to the District Commander for Kirklees, Chief Superintendent Jim Griffiths. I started by asking him how he responds when parents in Huddersfield, like we've heard from, say that they are terrified for their children.
Well, I can understand why they're terrified. And we've seen a change in serious violence across Kirklees. It's no different to other towns and cities across the country, but where 3 or 4 years ago you might have seen a serious violence offence being committed because it was a criminal vendetta, involvement in drugs, or the individuals were part of criminal gangs. We're not seeing that as much now. We're seeing young people coming together against other young people, and it might be groups of individuals who are friends who are falling out with other groups, and at one time that might have been a group who would have had a fight with the other group. Now one of those individuals, or more than one of them, might bring a knife to that fight, with terrible consequences for everybody involved.
There were more than 2,300 serious offences, including a knife, in West Yorkshire last year. That figure's up from 5 years ago. What are you doing to tackle it here in Huddersfield?
Well, here in Huddersfield we've got a lot of things going on to try and understand that picture. So it can't just be about enforcement. The last thing I want to do is criminalise young people, and we've got a lot of things that we've done in terms of our youth justice to prevent that, whether that be education, going into schools and actually supporting young people to make them aware of what the consequences of actions such as that can be. We've got the Peak project where we've worked in conjunction with Huddersfield Town Foundation to try and put our police officers and people who have been affected by knife crime into those schools and in other youth clubs or other areas where young people might gather, so that they can see what is happening.
Are you relying too much on youth and community groups to do the work police should be doing?
Well, it can't just be our problem. We've got a number of extra patrols that we are putting into the areas at the right times when we look at the analysis and we work out when they should be going, and we've got those patrols in place. But I think the communities want to solve this with us, and they want to provide us the information. We need to make sure that people have got the information and where to send it.
Are communities doing it because they feel the police aren't?
I don't think they are, because they will see us out and about in those areas. They will know that we're out at the times when these things are happening. But we can't be everywhere all at once. And so that's why we need the help of parents, the help of professionals, or the help of friends, because those individuals who are friends of these people who are carrying knives, they could be the key.
We joined your officers on a sweep in Huddersfield Town Centre recently. They found a knife under a bush. Is that a common find?
It's not as common as you would think, but those shows that some of the tactics that we're employing, those new tactics, are working. The young people don't necessarily want to take the knives home because somebody might tell us, and so they'll hide it in a place where they can go back to it later on. And that's why we're keen to do those knife sweeps, or for anyone who might find a knife, tell us about it. It takes it off the streets.
Children have told us they're carrying knives to keep safe in Huddersfield. What do you say to them?
I'd say that anyone that knows somebody that's carrying a knife, tell us. or tell somebody so that we can speak to those individuals, we can get the right support about them, or we can get the right services involved so we can stop those tragic consequences in the future.
Chief Superintendent Jim Griffiths, thank you. So how much more needs to be done? We've had a statement from the Home Office in the last few minutes saying we continue to take a hard stance against those who carry knives, removing 90,000 knives and offensive weapons since 2019 from our streets through stop and search, surrender initiative and other targeted police action. Let's chat now to Carl Moulton from St Giles, a charity that works with schools and youth groups, to talk about the dangers of knife crime. We heard there, welcome, thank you for coming in, Giles. We heard there from the police saying that knife crime is everyone's problem. How important is the work that you do with children?
Some of the work that we're doing is very important because we're doing the early intervention prevention work. So we're going in as early as possible, as young as year 5 in school, so that's your 9-year-olds, 10 years old, and working them, we call the safer transition. So working with them from year 9, year 5, year 6, those that are vulnerable, at risk of exploitation, working with them into a safe transition into secondary, into year 7.
You've been there, you've been involved in crime. What response do you get as opposed to someone in uniform going in and chatting to these kids?
I think the St Giles come with a lived experience, so within the SOS Plus project and my team we have a lot of lived experience. So with the lived experience model, what we're able to do is we're able to speak with these young people on their level. We're able to take ourselves back in time and realise the consequence of what our actions was, but able to understand where they are now. Kids
going to parties and taking knives, it's not right. How do you stop it?
Again, it's the awareness. I mean, just watching your clip there where you said about young people carrying knives to keep themselves safe. We know that actually it's around 82%, 86% where people that carry knives are actually putting themselves in more danger. So again, it's all about demystifying, challenging the mindset, giving them that early intervention where we can actually explain to them what is actually entertainment and what's actually reality.
We do know that a lot of the children involved in knife crime aren't necessarily in education, so how do you reach those who aren't in schools?
Well, again, whether they're in alternate provision or if it comes through social services, youth offending services, or even community, we can actually we also cover self-referrals as well. So if these young people are identified, then again, we can pick them up. Previously, we'd work on the premise of a triangular approach. So that's where we'll go into schools. Secondary, we'll do whole year assemblies with the kids. So whether it's weapons awareness or county lines, then what we'll do is we'll do a professional session with teachers, safeguarding, behaviour, and then what we also do, we do another session with parents. So what we have then is you have the triangular approach which bonds the two together, because if a young person is in education, they'll spend more time in education than what they will at home. So therefore, if a teacher picks something up in school, in education, they can phone the parent or carer, let them know, and then obviously then, instead of it being defensive and going, no, not us, it's not my son, that actually bridges that again. We can step in, pick them up at an early intervention so it's not too late.
Just really quickly, a boy's dead, 2 other boys' lives have been ruined. How does this stop?
Again, we can't speak on individual cases. However, I think this is something that's going on at the moment, which I think more people need to get together. I think more communities need to come together. I think more work of all professional settings need to come together so that we can actually do things together to actually go out into the community and help these young people.
Carl Moulton, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Staying in Huddersfield, an inquest has been opened into the death of a 17-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed in the town. Harley Brown died from his injuries after the attack on Kingsmill Lane on the 20th of February. 2 boys, aged 14 and 16, have been charged with murder and are due to appear before Leeds Crown Court tomorrow. A police officer has been assaulted as she followed up reports of a suspected cannabis farm in Huddersfield last night. The officer was hit by a brick in the Thornton Lodge Road area. She was taken to hospital with a head injury and later discharged. Detectives say charges will be brought against anyone who attacks officers. Let's return now to Kyrie. His death attracted headlines and shocked people across the country. Those living within the community have talked to us about gang culture, street fights and the loss of young lives, and they say they want the violence to stop.
When you send your child to school, you don't expect that to be the last time you say goodbye.
I would say the word that comes to mind is probably, I'd say devastating. It's such a shame. When I heard about the death of Kyrie, I was in shock, total shock. And to think that those children that go to the school, they had to walk past here every day seeing all of this. It's devastating. It's actually heartbreaking.
I knew Kyrie from the community. I know his mum. My initial reaction was to cry. He had left school, literally walked out of school gates and been murdered on the doorsteps.
I don't want to, and I know you don't want this either, to see other places in our local community like this. Every time we get to a certain point, there's another memory of a young person who's lost their life. This has to end. Knowing what's going on right now, especially in Deaton and surrounding areas like Bracknell and Fartown, it saddens me, really.
You know, as much as I can say I've got these great memories of living here, I face my own trauma, you know, and that's what I've got to look at, but that trauma doesn't define who I am. I always knew about the reputation of Bracknell. There used to be loads of street fights outside the pub that was there. However, I still never ever felt unsafe being there. If I speak to young people, my views of what I see Fartown of is very different to how they see it now. You should be able to feel safe walking down any street, but that is not the case. We have, you know, some young people that their idea of safety is to front up and pull out a knife or show a knife, and if another person backs down from that, then they're seen as weak.
Walking past here, it saddens me. And I don't want to walk another few metres up the road to Riddings to be walking past another area that a young person's lost their life.
Certainly is heartbreaking, isn't it? That was Serena Johnson and Sophie Simpson in that report. Next, let's hear from Annabelle Dees, who has spent time with families and young people in Huddersfield, and she's made documentaries about knife crime in the town. I asked her if, sadly, it was only a matter of time before someone was killed.
Tragically, I really think it was actually, yes. I spoke to people in my local community at a vigil following Kyrie's death, and while people were obviously horrified by what had happened, there was a sort of grim sense of inevitability. I've spent a significant amount of time in that area. While I was there making a series for Radio 5 Live, I came across a 7-year-old who was carrying a knife. I came across multiple young people who carried knives, parents who talked about their children carrying knives, not necessarily with the intention of using the knife, but to protect themselves in some circumstances. But of course, if you carry a knife, it's more likely to be used against you. And I think children are aware of that, but it doesn't necessarily compute. So something like this was sadly bound to happen, I believe.
People used to use fists. How has it got to this point where children as young as 7 are using knives?
I really don't know how it's got to this point. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying, but I think, you know, one child has got a knife. Children feel the need to protect themselves and they don't understand that carrying a knife can have fatal consequences.
You've spent time with these young people, you spent time with their families. What are they telling you?
People are telling me they need intervention from the authorities a lot earlier. It needs to get to the point where a crisis doesn't happen for the authorities to intervene to help young people. It needs to be the first sign of trouble that help is offered. And as we know, you know, there's huge cuts to social services over the last decade or so. There's been cuts to policing, and people in that local area feel that these cuts have had an impact on the support that young people get and the opportunities that are available to them as well in this area. In the area of Fartown, while I was there wasn't even a children's playground until one particular youth group campaigned for one to get built. There's a devastating lack of opportunity for young people. While I was there, I wasn't driving, and even getting into the centre of Huddersfield from Fartown can be really tricky after 5 o'clock. People are very much stuck in this immediate area, and children haven't really got much to do after school, so they're out on the streets, they haven't really got anywhere to go, and sadly, things can go wrong.
And very briefly, how confident are you that things will change as a result of Kyrie's death?
In the words of one of the 14-year-olds that I spoke to after Kyrie's death, not particularly confident. This is a problem that's been going on for a long time in the area. I spoke to a mother whose son was charged with attempted murder after his part in a stabbing 4 years ago when I made a documentary following Kyrie's murder, and she was horrified. She said, nothing's changed, Ben. Why is anything going to change now? But change really does need to happen.
Annabelle Dees, thank you for your insight. So quite a bleak picture there. Kirklees Council have told us today that they are focusing on rebuilding youth services, and they recently provided £1 million to local groups to create more safe places for young people. We've spoken to community organisations in Huddersfield that are working hard to tackle these issues. Our social affairs correspondent Emma Glasby has spent time at a boxing club in the town.
It's got good street cred, you see, so young people want to have a go at boxing. We're spreading the gospel of amateur boxing, how boxers train, the discipline of that sport, and it works because we're doing it day in, day out.
1, 2, 4 punches!
They can get up to 600 people coming to this club in Huddersfield every week to get fit, to see friends after school, sometimes for education, for extra support. Here at Rawthorpe Boxing Club, there are strict rules. They're focused. But these young people are growing up in a town with a knife crime problem.
There's gangs, there's people getting groomed, county lines, people are getting exploited. These gangs are ruthless. It's all about money and power and greed. A lot of these young people that are up to all sorts down outside in the streets, they want to come to a boxing club because it's good street cred for them. But once we've got them, we'll turn them round.
3, 2, 1, jump off!
15-year-old Kyrie McLean did come here a few times with his school last year, just months before he was stabbed to death. He trained with Terry.
He'd been here a few times and I remember him. I remember him just as a quiet kid, but just got on with it when we did circuits on the middle floor. We did sparring, just a normal kid.
It must have been just devastating for everyone here to hear about it.
Yeah. There must be a bit of fear about walking around in the streets. I mean, it could be any one of them, couldn't it?
Move round.
So how do you get more children coming here? And how do you keep a place like this expanding in difficult times?
We're struggling. Our bills are 4 times more a month than they ever were. The cost of living's gone up, but there's not as many people coming because of the cost of living, because of the pandemic. So we're running on a loss ourselves personally. It can't be sustained forever, so something's going to be give.
A few miles away, in the centre of Huddersfield, there is another place for young people.
You feel very safe here. It's just a warm feeling when you come in. You've got music on, everyone's being nice to each other. You never have a problem. This is the only youth club that I know of, what we have in West Yorkshire, never mind Huddersfield. So apart from this, people, because there's nothing to do, they'll find something to do.
Conscious Youth works with young people across Kirklees. This is the Friday night session.
I feel like Huddersfield, there's a lot of younger people getting into stuff that they really shouldn't be. So to come here and see I just feel like it's really nice to have a place where you can come and you can see other people without thinking you have to get into stuff that you don't need to.
There's food and video games, but they also hold sessions talking about issues like knife crime. The women who run it say the value of this place can't be overestimated.
A lot of places got closed in 2016 when there was cuts to youth services, and we knew the impact it would have on young people locally, and we have had this vision for a while now. We always say to them, this is home from home, and it's nice for them to be able to come somewhere where they can be themselves, they can express how they feel about the things that are happening around them in the world.
But again, there's frustration because they want to do more.
We've got ideas, we've got things we want to implement. We want this building used more. We want it open at least every night of the week, but we just don't have the funding.
Their town has had a difficult reputation. These young people all talk about wanting better for Huddersfield. They want more of this and more support to keep this going. Emma Glasby, BBC Look North, Huddersfield.
Well, we're going to go back to Emma now because she's been covering the case from the start. We can rejoin her from Leeds Crown Court. Emma, a truly horrific case that has raised so many questions.
Yes, well, the murder of Kyrie McLean near his school in Huddersfield shocked not only West Yorkshire, but the whole country when it happened in September last year. Now, in Huddersfield, parents, understandably, were horrified. They are still worried. We've heard from the parents tonight who are scared that their children are being exposed to gangs, to knife crime. Now, the trial is over, although we await sentencing. There is some justice tonight for the family and friends of Kyrie McLean. But there are many questions. Why are children carrying knives? Why are children being stabbed in the street? And what can be done? What needs to be done to prevent another child being murdered?
Emma, thank you. Well, these are issues we'll continue to look at in the coming days. Let's hear now from Paul. He's got the latest forecast. It's been surprisingly warm today, Paul.
Yes, that's right. Definitely a touch of spring today with blue sky and sunshine, and most of us actually avoided the scattered showers. So tomorrow it looks like more of the same, sunshine and scattered showers. I think most of the shower activity will actually come through the course of the night, and some of the showers are likely to be fairly heavy. Now, low pressure is in charge at the moment. That's what's driving all the showers. But as we've discovered today, even though it's an unsettled setup, there's been plenty of sunshine around. Now, this is the chart as we head through Friday into the weekend. I think Friday the showers will be more widespread with some thunder possibly on Friday afternoon, and then a bit mixed over the weekend. Variable clouds, some sunshine, and temporarily colder air on the way late Sunday into Monday, but that won't last long. Milder air returns by the middle of next week. Now, we're just looking down to the southwest, coming across Wales now, some very heavy downpours with rumbles of thunder. They're moving northeastwards across our part of the world. So Yorkshire, the North Midlands will see these showers heavy with rumbles of thunder very quickly moving in from the southwest. In turn, they will clear out of the way. It's going to be cooler than last night with temperatures around 5 or 6 degrees. So the high water times for tomorrow in Scarborough at 5:10 and again at 18 minutes past 5. So a lovely start to the day in the morning, lots of blue sky and sunshine, but we'll see scattered showers, say from mid-morning across the Pennines. They will move eastwards. As you can see, the greens indicate 1 or 2 on the heavy side, but there will be plenty of drier and brighter weather in between the showers with further sunny spells. It's going to be windy, temperatures close to today's values, actually 14 or 15, still mild for late March. Friday, those showers a bit more widespread and heavier. It turns colder by Sunday, but then milder again by the middle of next week. That's the forecast.
Well, that's it from us. Thank you very much for your company. We'll be back with our late news at 10:30. You can join us then. Bye-bye for now.